when my niece called me crying, "Auntie, I think I ruined everything. I had no idea she was confessing to destroying my life's work." 3 days later, I was sitting across from a forensic accountant discovering that my sister's perfect family had been systematically stealing from me for 8 years. Emma was about to learn that sometimes the aunt you betray is the one who knows all your secrets. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Let me tell you how I went from successful restaurateur to nearly bankrupt and back to the woman who owned everything my sister ever wanted. Because, honey, this story has more layers than a wedding cake and just as sweet a revenge. My name is Diana Chen, and for 15 years I ran Chen's Garden, the most successful Chinese fusion restaurant in Portland. What started as a food cart in 2008 became a restaurant empire worth $4.2 million by 2023. I did it alone. No husband, no investors, just me, my grandmother's recipes, and a work ethic that would make most people weep. My older sister, Patricia, took a different path. She married young, had 3 kids, and played the role of perfect suburban mother, while her husband Martin climbed the corporate ladder. On the surface, we were close. Sunday dinners at my restaurant, family vacations I paid for, tuition help for the kids I provided without question. Patricia was my only sister, and after our parents died in 2015, we only had each other. Or so I thought. 8 years ago, Patricia came to me with a proposal. "Diana, you're so busy with the restaurant. Let me help with the bookkeeping. I have an accounting degree I've never used. It'll be good for me to feel productive again." I should have seen the calculation in her eyes, but I was drowning in expansion plans, training new chefs, and negotiating a second location. Having family handle the finances seemed like the perfect solution. "Are you sure?" I'd asked. "It's a lot of work." "Diana, you've given us so much over the years. Let me finally give something back." That phrase should have been my first warning. In my family, nothing was ever truly given back. Patricia took over everything: accounts payable, payroll, vendor relations, tax preparation. I focused on the creative side, developing new menu items, building relationships with food critics, and turning Chen's Garden into a destination restaurant. We opened the second location in 2018, a third in 2021. By 2023, we had 4 restaurants and 87 employees. I was so proud. My sister kept telling me how well we were doing, showing me spreadsheets that indicated steady growth and healthy profit margins. Martin would shake my hand at family dinners, congratulating me on my business acumen. Their daughter, Emma, my eldest niece, started working at the flagship restaurant when she turned 16. She was bright, ambitious, and seemed genuinely interested in the restaurant business. By the time she was 22, I'd promoted her to assistant manager, paying her $65,000 a year plus bonuses. "You're so good to her," Patricia would say, her voice warm with sisterly affection. "Emma loves working for you." What I didn't know was that Emma was earning $65,000 from me, while her mother paid her an additional $40,000 from my company accounts for consulting services that never existed. The first crack in their facade appeared 3 months ago during a routine meeting with my insurance agent. He mentioned that my business insurance premiums had increased significantly due to several claims filed over the past 2 years. Claims? I stared at him, confused. What claims? He pulled up his records. Workers' compensation claims. 3 in 2022, 4 in 2023. All settled, but they impacted your rates significantly. I'd never approved any workers' comp settlements. I didn't even know there had been claims. That evening, I asked Patricia about it during our weekly business review. She barely looked up from her laptop. "Oh, those. Minor kitchen accidents, Diana. I handled them directly to avoid bothering you with paperwork. Nothing serious." But her hand trembled slightly as she typed. I noticed because I'd never seen Patricia's hand tremble before. I started paying attention to things I'd ignored for years. The way Patricia would close her laptop quickly when I entered her home office. How Martin would change the subject whenever I asked about their new Tesla or their kitchen renovation. The expensive vacations Emma posted on Instagram while supposedly living on an assistant manager's salary. 2 months ago, I made a decision that changed everything. I hired a private forensic accountant without telling anyone. His name was Richard Torres, and he specialized in family business fraud. "Ms. Chen," he said during our initial consultation, "family theft is more common than people think. If you're feeling suspicious, trust that instinct." I gave him complete access to every business account, every tax return, every document Patricia had handled over the past 8 years. Then I waited, continuing to smile at Sunday dinners while my sister talked about Emma's upcoming wedding to her boyfriend Tyler. "Diana, we need to discuss wedding costs," Patricia said one Sunday, passing me homemade dumplings I'd taught her to make 20 years ago. "Emma wants a destination wedding in Cabo. We were hoping you might contribute to the venue cost." The venue cost was $85,000 for a 24-year-old whose mother had already stolen millions from me, though I didn't know the exact number yet. "Let me think about it," I said, watching Emma show off her engagement ring to her younger siblings. That's when Emma looked at me with something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Guilt, maybe, or fear. The phone call came at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was awake, as I often was lately, reviewing financial documents Richard had started flagging as suspicious. When I saw Emma's name on the screen, my first thought was that something terrible had happened. "Auntie Diana?" Her voice was wrecked with crying. "Auntie, I think I ruined everything." I sat up straight. "Emma, what's wrong? Are you hurt?" "No, I need to tell you something. About Mom, about the restaurant accounts." My heart started pounding. "What about them?" "Tyler found some documents on my laptop. Financial records Mom told me to keep in case anything happened to her. He's an accountant, and he started asking questions. And Auntie, I didn't know how bad it was until he explained it to me." "Emma, take a breath. Tell me what Tyler found." What came out over the next 30 minutes destroyed every assumption I'd held about my family. Patricia hadn't just been doing bookkeeping. She'd created an elaborate system of fake vendors, phantom employees, and fraudulent expense reports that had siphoned approximately $3.2 million from my restaurants over 8 years. "She told me it was normal," Emma sobbed. "She said all business owners did this kind of thing for tax purposes. She said you knew about it but pretended not to, so you could claim ignorance if the IRS ever questioned anything." "Emma, I had no idea." "Tyler says it's fraud. He says Mom could go to prison. He says I could go to prison because I processed some of the payments." There it was, the real reason for the confession. Not guilt over betraying me, but fear of legal consequences. "How much did you know?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Mom started including me about 3 years ago. She said I was earning my place in the family business. She paid me consulting fees for helping maintain the system. I thought, God, I'm so stupid. I thought everyone did business this way." Emma had received approximately $320,000 over 3 years for her participation, money that came from my profits while I was paying her a legitimate salary. "Emma, I need you to send me everything Tyler found, every document, every file. Auntie, please don't hate me. I love you. I never wanted to hurt you. Send me the documents, Emma. Tonight." After hanging up, I sat in the darkness of my bedroom, processing the enormity of the betrayal. My sister, the person I'd trusted with everything, had been robbing me systematically while accepting my help with her mortgage, her kids' education, her lifestyle. The documents Emma sent were damning. Spreadsheets tracking every fraudulent transaction, email exchanges between Patricia and Emma discussing how to hide certain payments, bank statements showing wire transfers to accounts in Patricia's name. But there was something else in the files, something Emma probably didn't realize she'd sent. A recorded conversation between Patricia and Martin from 6 months ago, discussing what they'd do when I eventually discovered the theft. I played it with shaking hands. Patricia's voice, casual and cold. "Diana will never figure it out. She's too busy playing chef to understand real business operations. Martin's response, "What if she does?" "Then we're already prepared. The offshore accounts are untraceable. We'll claim Diana knew everything and approved it all. It'll be her word against ours, and we have 8 years of her signature on documents that suggest she was aware of every transaction." "What about Emma?" "Emma will do what she's told. She's benefited too much to turn on us now." They'd planned for my discovery. They'd created a legal trap that would make me appear complicit in their fraud. I called Richard Torres at 6 a.m. "We need to meet immediately. I have everything you need." Richard Torres's office became my second home over the next 3 days. We went through every document, building a timeline of the theft that was even worse than Emma's midnight confession suggested. "Diana, your sister is remarkably sophisticated in her fraud," Richard said, spreading documents across his conference table. "She created a network of fake vendors with legitimate-looking websites, business licenses, and tax IDs. She paid herself through these entities for services never rendered. The fake vendors had names like Pacific Food Distributors, Chen's Consulting Services, and Northwest Restaurant Solutions. Each looked legitimate on paper. Each had been billing my restaurants for years." "How much?" I asked, though I was afraid of the answer. "So far, I've documented $3.8 million in fraudulent transactions. But Diana, I think there's more. Some of these offshore accounts Emma mentioned, I need a few more days to trace them." "How long has Patricia been planning this?" Richard pulled out the earliest document he'd found. "Based on this, I'd say she started planning before she even offered to help with your bookkeeping. Some of these corporate structures were created 8 months before she came to work for you. My sister had looked me in the eye and volunteered to help me while already setting up the infrastructure to rob me." "There's something else," Richard said carefully. "Your business is in serious financial trouble because of this. Your actual profit margins are about 60% lower than what Patricia has been reporting. You're over-leveraged on the expansion, and if we factor in the stolen money, you're essentially insolvent." The room spun. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that if this continues, Chen's Garden will have to declare bankruptcy within 6 months. Your sister has been bleeding the business dry while making you think you're profitable enough to keep expanding. 4 restaurants, 87 employees who depended on me, a legacy I'd built from nothing, all of it collapsing because I'd trusted my sister. What are my options?" "Legally, you have several paths: criminal charges, civil suit, both. But Diana, I need you to understand something. Going after your sister will be expensive and public. This will make news. Your reputation will be affected, even though you're the victim." "What's the alternative?" "Some people choose to handle these situations privately, force repayment, sever ties, move on." I thought about the recording of Patricia dismissing me as too stupid to understand real business. I thought about Emma crying not because she'd betrayed me, but because she might face consequences. I thought about Martin shaking my hand at family dinners while planning my downfall. "What would you do?" I asked Richard. He looked at me for a long moment. "Diana, I've worked with dozens of family fraud victims. The ones who recover best are the ones who refuse to be silent. Scorch the earth. Make sure everyone knows what happened. It's the only way to stop them from doing it to someone else. Set up a meeting with my attorney. I want to file criminal charges today." But first, I needed to have one more family dinner. I called Patricia that afternoon. "Sunday dinner at my place this week. I want to celebrate Emma's engagement properly. Tell everyone to dress nice. I'm doing something special." Patricia's voice was warm, unsuspecting. "Diana, you don't have to do that. You've already been so generous." "Family is everything," I said, using her own favorite phrase. "I want to do this." Sunday arrived. I'd catered the dinner from my own restaurant, the same menu I'd served at countless family celebrations. Patricia, Martin, Emma, Tyler, and the 2 younger kids arrived at 6 p.m. sharp. "Auntie Diana, the house looks beautiful," Emma said, not quite meeting my eyes. Tyler held her hand tightly, looking deeply uncomfortable. We sat down to dinner. I poured expensive wine. We toasted to Emma and Tyler's future. Everything was perfect, just like always. Dessert was being served when I stood up. I have an announcement. Patricia smiled warmly. Let me guess, you're offering to pay for the wedding venue? Not exactly. I'm announcing that I've filed criminal fraud charges against you, Martin and Emma. The silence was absolute. Patricia's smile froze on her face. Diana, what are you talking about? I'm talking about the $3.8 million you've stolen from me over 8 years. The fake vendors, the phantom employees, the offshore accounts. All of it. Martin stood up. Diana, I think you're confused about how business accounting works. Sit down, Martin. I have forensic accountants who've documented everything. I have the recordings Emma sent me, including the one where you and Patricia discuss how you'll blame me if I ever discover the theft. Emma started crying. Auntie, please. I told you I didn't understand. Emma, you're 24 years old with a business degree. You understood exactly what you were doing when you accepted $320,000 for helping your mother steal from me. Patricia's mask finally cracked. You ungrateful bitch. Everything we did was to protect you from your own incompetence. You were expanding too fast, making terrible business decisions. We were trying to save you from yourself. By stealing millions? By ensuring the family business stayed in the family. You're single, Diana. You have no children. Who are you building this empire for? We're your legacy. The audacity was breathtaking. She'd stolen from me and convinced herself it was actually for my benefit. Patricia, you're my sister. I loved you. I trusted you with everything. And I made you rich. Chen's Garden only succeeded because I managed the finances. You were too busy playing artist in the kitchen to understand real business. Then you'll have no trouble explaining to a jury why you needed fake vendors and offshore accounts to run a legitimate business. Martin moved toward me. Tyler stepped between us. Mr. Hayes, I wouldn't. Diana's attorney is on video call right now, recording everything. I held up my phone, showing my attorney's face on the screen. Hi, Patricia, Martin. Everything you've said tonight is being documented. Patricia lunged at me. The younger kids screamed. Tyler and Martin grabbed her as she shrieked obscenities I'd never heard from my refined older sister. Diana, please, Emma begged. Don't do this to our family. I'm not doing anything to your family, Emma. Your mother did this when she decided I was too stupid to notice her stealing from me. The police arrived 10 minutes later. I'd arranged for them to wait outside until I gave the signal. Patricia, Martin, and Emma were arrested at my dining room table, surrounded by the remains of the meal I'd prepared. As they were being led out, Patricia turned to me. You'll never survive this. The scandal will destroy your restaurants. No one will want to eat at a place run by a family of criminals. You're right about one thing, I said. No one wants to eat at a place run by criminals. Good thing I'm the victim, not the criminal. The next morning, I received a call from Richard Torres. Diana, we found something. You need to come to my office immediately. When I arrived, Richard had a laptop open showing bank statements I'd never seen before. These are accounts in the Cayman Islands, registered to various shell corporations. But Diana, they're not all Patricia's accounts. What do you mean? Your father. Before he died, he set up trusts for both you and Patricia. Substantial trusts, each worth about $2 million. The money was supposed to be released to you both when the youngest turned 25. I never received anything from Dad. I know, because Patricia has been managing your trust since your parents died. She's been using your inheritance to fund the offshore accounts she planned to claim if you ever discovered the fraud. My sister hadn't just stolen from my business. She'd been stealing my inheritance for 8 years. There's more. Your father included a provision that if either sister attempted to defraud the other, their entire trust would transfer to the victim, Diana. Because of Patricia's theft, you're now entitled to both trusts, plus damages. We're talking about $4 million plus 8 years of investment growth, probably close to $6.2 million. The irony was so perfect it was almost beautiful. Patricia had been so focused on stealing my business profits that she'd triggered a clause that cost her everything she was actually entitled to inherit. Does Patricia know about this? Based on the documents Emma sent you, yes. There's an email from 6 years ago where Patricia discusses the trust provision with Martin. She knew exactly what she was risking. My sister had gambled that I'd never discover the theft. She'd been so confident in my ignorance that she'd risked her own inheritance on her ability to deceive me. Richard, how bad is the damage to my restaurants? With the trust money and the civil recovery we're pursuing, you'll be able to stabilize the business. It'll take about 2 years to fully recover, but Chen's Garden will survive your sister's plan to bankrupt you failed. The media coverage began that afternoon. Local restaurateur fights back against family fraud made front-page news. Within 24 hours, I had interview requests from 3 major news networks, 2 podcasts, and a book publisher. My restaurants, rather than being destroyed by scandal, became symbols of resilience. Customers lined up to support the woman who'd been betrayed by her own family. Revenue actually increased. Patricia, Martin, and Emma each faced multiple felony charges. Their bail was set high enough that they couldn't afford it, even with Martin's corporate salary. They sat in county jail while their attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal. Tyler called me 3 days after the arrests. Ms. Chen, I need you to know that I had no idea about any of this until I found those documents Emma told me her mother was helping with legitimate tax strategies. Tyler, are you standing by Emma? I don't know. I love her, but she lied to me about everything. Our entire relationship was built on money she stole from you. Tyler, let me tell you something I've learned. Character shows up when consequences arrive. Emma's character is showing up right now, and it's not pretty. He was quiet for a long moment. She's asking me to mortgage my future to pay her legal fees. She says if I really loved her, I'd help. And what are you going to do? I'm going to tell her the same thing you told her. Figure it out yourself. The next call was from Emma herself, crying again. Auntie Diana, please drop the charges. I'll pay back everything I took. I'll work for free at your restaurants for years. Just please don't send me to prison. Emma, when you called me that night, you weren't confessing because you felt guilty about betraying me. You were confessing because Tyler figured out you were committing crimes and you were afraid of going to prison. That's not true. I felt terrible about what we did. Really? Because in the 3 years you were actively participating in the fraud, you never once felt terrible enough to tell me. You felt terrible when you got caught. Please, Auntie, I'm your niece. I'm family. Emma, you stopped being my family when you chose $320,000 over my trust. Now you're just a person who committed crimes against me, facing the appropriate consequences. She hung up, still crying. Patricia's attorney tried everything to avoid trial. They offered full restitution plus interest. They suggested family mediation. They even tried to claim that Patricia had power of attorney that justified her financial decisions. I refused every offer. This was going to trial, and the entire city was going to watch my sister explain why she'd stolen from me. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The prosecution presented mountains of evidence, fake vendor invoices, forged signatures, wire transfer records, email exchanges discussing how to hide the fraud. Patricia's defense strategy was exactly what she'd planned in that recorded conversation. She claimed I'd approved everything, that I was a sophisticated business owner who understood exactly where the money was going, and that this was all a misunderstanding driven by my emotional instability after our parents' deaths. Diana Chen is a brilliant restaurateur, her attorney argued, but she's not good with detailed financial management. My client, Patricia Hayes, stepped in to help her sister and followed every instruction Diana provided. Then the prosecution played the recording of Patricia and Martin discussing how they'd blame me if I ever discovered the theft. Patricia's face went white as her own voice filled the courtroom. Diana will never figure it out. She's too busy playing chef to understand real business operations. The defense never recovered. Emma testified under a plea agreement, describing in detail how her mother had recruited her into the scheme, trained her to process fraudulent payments, and paid her to maintain the system. She cried through most of her testimony, claiming she'd been manipulated by Patricia. When it was my turn to testify, I looked directly at Patricia as I described 8 years of trust, support, and sisterly love that she'd exploited for profit. Patricia told me that family was everything, I said. I believed her. I gave her access to every aspect of my business because she was my sister. She used that access to systematically destroy the company I'd built from nothing. Patricia's attorney cross-examined me aggressively. Ms. Chen, isn't it true that you're a control freak who couldn't handle your sister's success in managing your finances? No. Isn't it true that you approved these vendor relationships and are now having second thoughts because your business is struggling? My business is struggling because my sister stole $3.8 million from it. You keep calling it theft, but these were legitimate business expenses. Then why did she create offshore accounts to hide the money? Why did she tell her husband they'd blame me if I discovered what she was doing? Why did she steal my inheritance? The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Patricia Hayes, guilty on 47 counts of fraud, embezzlement, and grand larceny. Martin Hayes, guilty on 23 counts of conspiracy and fraud. Emma Hayes, guilty on 12 counts of fraud and conspiracy, reduced from original charges due to cooperation. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. Patricia, 15 years in federal prison, $4.2 million in restitution. Martin, 8 years in federal prison, $1.6 million in restitution. Emma, 3 years in federal prison, $320,000 in restitution, suspended to probation if restitution is paid within 5 years. As Patricia was led out of the courtroom, she looked at me one final time. I hope you're happy, Diana. You destroyed our family. No, Patricia, you did that yourself. 6 months after the trial, I sat in my newly renovated flagship restaurant, reviewing financial reports with my new CFO, hired from a top accounting firm with impeccable references and no family connections whatsoever. Diana, we're officially back in the black, Jennifer said, smiling at her laptop screen. The trust inheritance, combined with the publicity boost and the insurance recovery, means Chen's Garden is actually in better financial position than it was before the fraud. Better than before. My sister had tried to destroy me and accidentally made me stronger. The media attention had been intense, but ultimately beneficial. I'd given interviews to everyone from local news to 60 Minutes, telling my story and advocating for better protections for family business owners. The Margaret Sullivan Foundation for Elder Protection reached out, asking if I'd be interested in starting a similar organization for family business fraud victims. I'd agreed immediately, using part of the recovered funds to establish the Chen Family Business Protection Initiative. Tyler had called off his engagement to Emma 2 weeks after her conviction. I can't marry someone who could lie to me that extensively, he'd told me during a coffee meeting where he apologized for his ex-fiance's behavior. Tyler, you did the right thing by bringing this to light. You probably saved my business. I just wish Emma had been who I thought she was. We all wish that about people who disappoint us. Emma served 6 months in county jail before being released on probation. She'd managed to pay a portion of her restitution by selling her car, jewelry, and everything else of value she owned. She still owed me $285,000. She'd tried to contact me twice. Both times, I'd blocked her number. Patricia's younger children, now teenagers, had been placed with Martin's parents after his conviction. I'd set up college funds for them, anonymous donations that would pay for their education without them knowing the money came from me. They were victims of their parents' crimes. They didn't deserve to suffer for Patricia's choices. Patricia herself had written me from prison. 11 letters over 6 months, each one following a predictable pattern. First denial, then justification, then bargaining, finally something approximating an apology. I'd read the first 3 letters and stopped opening the rest. My restaurant manager, David, approached my table. "Diana, there's someone here to see you. Says she's your niece." Emma stood near the hostess station, wearing clothes I didn't recognize and looking like she'd aged 5 years in 6 months. She was thinner, tired, defeated. "Auntie Diana, please. 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I nodded to David. "Bring her over." Emma sat down across from me, her hands shaking. "I know you don't want to see me. I know I don't deserve your time, but I needed to tell you something in person." "What?" "Mom is trying to appeal her conviction. She's claiming you manipulated evidence and that the jury was biased against her. She's raising money from extended family members, telling them you're the villain in this story." I wasn't surprised. Patricia had always been good at rewriting narratives to make herself the victim. "Emma, why are you telling me this?" "Because it's wrong. Because I've spent 6 months living with the consequences of believing Mom's version of reality, and I finally understand what I did to you. I stole from you. I betrayed you. I helped Mom destroy the business you built, and I did it because she told me it was okay, and I wanted to believe her." "Emma, is this an apology or an excuse?" "It's both. It's me saying I'm sorry and I was wrong, but also explaining that I was 21 when this started, and I trusted my mother completely. She raised me to think family loyalty meant helping her steal from you." I looked at my niece, seeing not the confident young woman who'd worked as my assistant manager, but a broken kid who'd learned the hardest possible lesson about character and consequences. "Emma, I appreciate you telling me about Patricia's appeal. I'll notify my attorney. But I want to be clear about something. We're not rebuilding a relationship. You made adult choices that hurt me profoundly. The fact that your mother manipulated you doesn't erase your responsibility. I know, I needed you to know that I finally understand what I did was wrong. Not wrong because I got caught. Wrong because it hurt someone who loved me." "Emma, do you have a job?" She shook her head. "No one will hire me with a fraud conviction. I'm working DoorDash and Instacart, trying to pay you back." I pulled out a business card. "This is a friend of mine who runs a restaurant in Seattle. I'll call him today and tell him you're looking for work minimum wage, no special treatment. If you steal so much as a breadstick, I'll have you arrested for parole violation." Emma stared at the card like I'd handed her a winning lottery ticket. "Auntie, why would you help me?" "Because unlike your mother, I understand the difference between justice and cruelty. You've been held accountable. You've lost everything you valued. Now you get to rebuild yourself into someone better, if you choose to. I won't let you down." "Emma, you already let me down. This time, don't let yourself down." After she left, Jennifer looked at me with raised eyebrows. That was unexpectedly kind. Was it? I just made sure she's 3 states away and working for someone who'll call me if she so much as sneezes wrong. Jennifer laughed. "There's the Diana Chen I know." 1 year after Patricia's conviction, I stood in front of 200 people at a conference for family business owners, telling my story as a cautionary tale. "Family can be our greatest strength or our greatest vulnerability," I said, looking out at the audience of entrepreneurs who'd gathered to learn about fraud prevention. My sister knew exactly how to exploit my trust because she'd spent a lifetime learning my weaknesses. After the presentation, a woman approached me. She was in her 60s, well-dressed, and looked vaguely familiar. "Diana Chen, I'm Caroline Morrison. I own Morrison's Fine Dining in San Francisco." I knew the name. Morrison's was legendary, a 3 Michelin star restaurant that had dominated the Bay Area food scene for 30 years. "Ms. Morrison, it's an honor. Call me Caroline. Diana, I've been following your story, what your sister did to you. I went through something similar with my son 15 years ago. He embezzled $800,000 from my restaurant. I nearly lost everything." What did you do?" "I prosecuted him. He served 4 years in prison. We haven't spoken since his release." "Do you regret it?" Caroline looked at me with eyes that had seen similar pain. Every single day, but I'd do it again, because the alternative was letting him think that family love means accepting abuse. People keep telling me I should forgive Patricia, that holding grudges only hurts me. Diana, forgiveness and reconciliation aren't the same thing. You can forgive your sister for what she did and still refuse to let her back into your life. Forgiveness is about releasing your anger. Reconciliation is about rebuilding trust. One is possible, the other isn't always wise. We talked for an hour, sharing war stories and strategies for protecting ourselves from future betrayal. By the end, Caroline had offered to mentor me in taking Chen's Garden National. "You've got something special, Diana. Your food is excellent. But your story is what will make you legendary. The woman who survived family betrayal and came back stronger. People will line up to be part of that narrative." She was right. Over the next 2 years, Chen's Garden expanded to 12 locations across 5 states. My cookbook, Cooking Through Betrayal, Recipes and Resilience, became a bestseller. The documentary about my case, The Sister's Keeper, won an Emmy. Patricia's appeal was denied. She would serve her full 15-year sentence. I received regular updates from the prison system, but never visited some bridges. Once burned, should stay ashes. Emma paid off her restitution in 4 years through relentless work and extreme frugality. The restaurant owner in Seattle told me she was his most reliable employee, always early, never calling in sick, treating every shift like an audition for redemption. When she made her final payment, she sent me a letter. "Auntie Diana, I've spent 4 years thinking about what I did to you. I've worked jobs I hated, lived in places I could barely afford, and sacrificed everything to pay you back. Not because a judge ordered it, but because I needed to prove to myself that I could do the right thing, even when it was hard. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect a relationship. I just needed you to know that I'm not the person who stole from you anymore. I'm someone else now. Someone who understands that character is built in moments when no one is watching, and there's no reward except knowing you did right. Thank you for giving me a chance to prove I could change. Thank you for being the aunt who held me accountable instead of the aunt who enabled my destruction. I hope someday you'll be proud of who I became, even if you never want to see me again. Love, Emma." I read the letter twice, then filed it away in a drawer I labeled Closed Chapters. 3 months later, Emma was accepted to a prestigious culinary school in New York. She called to tell me, her voice bright with hope. "Auntie, I got a full scholarship. They said my essay about learning integrity through consequences was the best they'd ever read." "Emma, that's wonderful. I want to be a chef like you. I want to build something I can be proud of, something clean.